The shortest tenure of any Harvard president ever has been brought to you by diversity, equity, and inclusion. Claudine Gay has stepped down as the president of Harvard just after 6 months of being in that position. She believes she has been forced out because of racism. In her resignation letter, she said it has been, quote, frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus, end quote. But here's the thing. If this had anything to do with racism, people would have called for her resignation before she testified that calling for genocide of Jews doesn't go against the Harvard Code of Conduct. Also, under the new scrutiny, it looks like she's a plagiarist. But it's no shock that she's playing the race card. It's convenient. I mean, it's so diversity, equity, inclusion. Am I right? Look, Claudine Gay was a DEI hire for 2 reasons. Number 1, she's the kind of person that gets hired when race is considered an important factor in the hiring process. And number 2, she's a product of the far-left neo-Marxist educational system that she is pushing in her career. Number 1 is how they sell diversity, equity, and inclusion. They tell us it's about helping marginalized people get a chance. Because without it, capable black and brown people would keep getting screwed over by the white man. But that's not what it's really about. Just look at the former Harvard president. She is the daughter of an engineer and a nurse and went to a private boarding school in New Hampshire. I don't think DEI was intended to help people who were privileged enough to go to a private school that currently costs $65,000 a year. At least that's not how DEI is sold. What it really is, though, is a way to push neo-Marxist ideas into our schools and workplaces. I've had to take DEI training a few times. In it, you'll find out that white people are privileged, and it doesn't matter what we say, what we do, or how we act. If anything we've done impacts a person of color negatively, it doesn't matter what our intentions were. We are wrong. The section is actually called Intent versus Impact. They tell you that as a white person, it doesn't matter what your intentions are, it only matters how it impacts a person of color. But get this. After that, they tell you that when someone points out your white privilege, that you should not get offended because they don't mean anything bad by it. Being white is a privilege, and you can't argue against that. Now, that brings us back to Miss Gay. Why doesn't she believe that calling for the genocide of all Jews on Harvard's campus violates their code of conduct? Because of DEI. The white man isn't allowed to be offended, and Jews are the white people, and Palestinians are the people of color. That's how she sees it. Neo-Marxism teaches people to see the world through the lens of the oppressors versus the oppressed. It doesn't matter if you grew up in the worst trailer park in the foothills of the Appalachians and your parents are alcoholic first cousins. As long as you're white, you're the oppressor. And you have privilege. It also doesn't matter if you went to an expensive private boarding school on the East Coast and a bunch of Ivy League universities. If you're black, you're the oppressed. Now, how in the world could that possibly make sense? Well, it makes sense when you understand their end goals. You see, Marxism assumes that the form of economic organization or mode of production influences all other social phenomena, including broader social relations, political institutions, legal systems, cultural systems, aesthetics, and ideologies. So if they could control how and why people get paid, they could control everything. DEI is about control. The more they can pit us against each other, the more they get to do to fix it. People like Claudine Gay are just pawns who've been indoctrinated to fight for an agenda that would destroy the American way of life as we know it. I was actually lucky enough to have lived a short time in a former communist country. I've heard firsthand stories of how bad it can be. And while people like Gay might believe the agenda she's pushing is a good thing, I can assure you there are those who know how bad it would be for the majority of us. Those are the George Soros and Klaus Schwab types. They know how a Marxist society ends, with few in power, few with wealth, and the majority of us poor and doing what we're told. And that's the simple truth. Hey guys, thanks for watching. And if you all want to support this channel, check out the links in the description, and let's keep putting some common sense back into the great debate.